Because he's a mime.
Yeah.
I went the opposite way where I was like, pantomime, where he'd be in like a sheet with the little eyes cut out, like they tried to do in Beetlejuice. To his credit, though, sometimes the parlor tricks that he used were pretty inexplicable. So people weren't able to explain how, before he actually gained entrance to their house, things like levitating beds and dining room tables turning around and toilet lids banging and like a doll, I guess, at some point in time was lifted off the floor and kind of did a little jig.
So were they parlor tricks?
Not sure.
Okay.
He was even written to the paper as a local kook or con man and a general persona non grata. So most were kind of staying away from him.
Yeah.
Around the same time, Ray and Dr. Lucy Linsky had moved to Fairwater a few months prior to meeting Bannister. They both had lived a pretty uneventful life, with Lucy working locally for a Dr. Kamens. He's the whole town doctor, and everyone knows him.
Yeah.
Ray was a man who was extremely healthy, often influencing others to take better care of themselves. So here's the deal. I know it sounds like I'm just throwing random names at you, as per the usual, but this is how we tell stories, or at least we tell stories to each other. Bannister and Ray had an unfortunate run-in when Bannister had swerved to avoid a truck because he's a notably bad driver.
Yeah, I mean, one time he even killed somebody.
I know, right? Oh, gosh. He had driven onto Ray and Lucy's lawn, decimating a fence.
And they were best friends ever since.
Yeah, that's how best friends work. Witnesses had stated that the pair was heated and clearly yelling at each other, because why would you want a car that is not something you placed there intentionally on your lawn that ruined your fence? You know. It eventually culminated with Bannister agreeing to have Ray get in touch and handing over his business card, the one that we talked about earlier, Psychic Investigator. It's such a silly card.
Oh, funny that you mentioned that. I need one of those.
Right?
Maybe you could come do this thing for me.
Well, here's the thing. Later that evening, he was called back to the house after Ray and Lucy had felt they had experienced some sort of paranormal activity.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
Uh-huh. He did the full song and dance and then left, according to a statement later made by Bannister. I know. I know. That evening, Ray had died of heart failure.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, super healthy man in his early 30s, heart failure. Not, I guess, uncommon, but someone that isn't...
But the events of that day were uncommon.
Yeah, the whole of the day was a bit odd.
You know, he met Duder. They called him back to the house because they felt like they experienced something paranormal. He comes in, dude who may or may not have carved the 13 into his wife's forehead, and then all of a sudden, homeboy just dies.
Right.
It's weird.
I agree. It's totally weird, for sure. The coroners later stated that it looked as though his heart had been squeezed, almost. I don't know that many medical conditions that would do that, but who knows? And I don't know of any sort of, like, murder that would do that, but who knows?
Can you even grasp that concept?
I gotta go. On another occasion, Bannister was at a restaurant and was seen in a bathroom with a man who was also later found dead. Examination determined his body exhibited signs that he had died in the same way as many others, including Ray, especially after he had had contact with Bannister.
Okay.
Witnesses at the scene of the restaurant were interviewed, and many had reported a man running from the bathroom. Most thought he was possibly ill, and noted that it was shortly before the unnamed man was found dead in the bathroom. One of these people, fun story, remember small town, was Dr. Linsky, who had been approached by Bannister to tell her that he could speak with her dead husband. Obviously, there's nothing really to tie Bannister to these crimes, aside from having contact with the victims shortly before their death, so police weren't able to bring him in, aside from some sort of general questioning about how strange these deaths were and why he was always in their proximity. They hoped that it would give them a clue strong enough to prosecute them for the strange and what some thought were possibly cult-affiliated.
Why cult-affiliated?
I don't know. I want to chalk it up to the fact that it's a small town, and they're just like, I can't explain this. It must have something to do with something.
Yeah, but I don't understand why we're thinking that there's like a whole mass of other people involved in it.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. But they also can't pin him at a lot of the other locations that these people are dying at.
Oh, so they're
either.
thinking maybe that could be why he's so elusive, is because maybe he has help?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without any hope to find the killer, they enlisted a special agent from the FBI. His name was Milton Dammers.
What a name.
Right? It's an odd name. And honestly, this dude is a really strange cat.
Milton Dammers.
Dammers was well known for working specifically with paranormally inclined cases and famously working undercover with several cults, including what he reported was sex work with the Manson family. Now, I started having an issue with his undercover work because I don't feel as though I've ever read anything where the Manson family ever had men in some sort of sexual slavery or sex work ever. Boyo, you're claiming a lot.
I've also never heard that, but to be fair, I've never really done a lot of research into the Manson family.
Yeah, I remember playing you his songs when we went to go get bagels in the morning that one time.
Yeah.
His work had made him highly susceptible to stressors, and there was a rumor that he had even marked his own skin in service to his work as an undercover agent. So it wasn't just the Manson family that he was undercover for. Some people said that he had scarification on his chest area, but it's under a shirt. Yeah. No one really knows.
Unless they're getting, like, bajiggity with him, you know, then they might.
I've seen a picture of him. I don't think anyone's getting bajiggity with him. I don't think one person, I don't even think a fleshlight. I feel like a fleshlight would roll out of the room. He comes to town, like, is looking through the case files. After he started reading the similarities between the deaths, the file on Deborah Bannister, and noting that Frank Bannister was loosely tied to some of the deaths, he had started to follow him and had specifically targeted any who knew him or had been seen in proximity of Frank Bannister in the last 5 years. The luck for the police was that a local museum was putting on a function. The reason the police had thought that Frank Bannister might be there and they can arrest him there is because Magda Reese-Jones was in attendance. So Magda Reese-Jones was an old reporter and then now an editor of the local paper that would be one of the champions of constantly coming on hard about how Frank Bannister was a complete con man and a total crook and like a bad person. They thought that while he was fairly heightened because everything's kind of been expedited and there's been more strange and mysterious deaths, that he might actually start going after her. She's kind of a rude and terrible bitch. She really is not. She's not a good person. No one knows why, but he was able to evade the authorities and abduct Reese-Jones before escaping the event. So he was actually literally able to kidnap her before the police got to him to arrest him.
Oh, fuck.
Sneaky little monster. A manhunt had followed, and police were on high alert. There was a bolo put out for Bannister's car. Police at the station had even joked that he was on the run and no one would see him again until a little bit later at the station, Frank Bannister came walking in.
Not a joking matter.
Not really, yeah, no.
And he abducted somebody. Not a joking matter, guys.
When he returned, he turned himself in and informed police that they would be able to find Reese-Jones' body off a road near the forested area.
Oh, fuck.
After his arrest, Bannister was kept in holding in the jail, and many thought that he was at risk for suicide and had mostly assumed that he wouldn't make it to the trial. So Lucy Linsky, the doctor, had continued to see her patients because obviously after she was questioned, no one kind of cared about her whereabouts because she was not under suspicion. She's not at fault.
Yeah.
One of the doctor's patients included Patricia Bradley, so the girl that we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Boom, boom, circle back around.
Full circle.
Boomeranging. On one visit to the Bradleys' house, she had noted that Patricia had a severe cut on her palm that, in her opinion, would need stitches. And when she brought up to Miss Bradley, she was completely unwilling to let Patricia leave the house and told her to come back and suture up at the house. She's not leaving. According to Dr. Linsky, her mother seemed a highly religious woman that may have had trouble letting go of control of her now 42-year-old daughter. Whether or not Patricia had benefited from her prison sentence, Miss Bradley was completely unwilling to let her past sins redeem her daughter's character, even though Patricia had said that everything was massively beneficial and she's a changed woman. The last visit to the house was to check up on Patricia, and because of other visits, Dr. Linsky was concerned that her mother would do or had been doing something to harm her. Because it was a private visit, Patricia and the doctor had planned it for when her mother was completely out of the house.
Well, smart lady then, yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, her mother had come back early and the doctor was forced to hide in one of the closets. She had said later that she was so frightened that Patricia was being harmed that she actually feared for her personal safety when she entered the house. While she was in the closet, she claims she had found a box cutter with the initials FB on the handle. She was able to leave only when Miss Bradley was distracted by Patricia and had reported to the police. At the police station, she had given some information about the box cutter, but none of the police really took it seriously. They, because she was there, had questioned her about Frank Bannister again. They also had used her to help to sort of cement some information and to possibly elicit some sort of reaction to gain some information that would hopefully tie Bannister to the crimes. Maybe because it was a familiar face that he had already tried to mess about with, that somehow she would be able to draw something out of him that would make it possible for them to prosecute him. Mm-hmm. After talking to the police, they had her go and speak to him in his cell. This is what happened. Honestly, it's one of the most infuriating things. Dr. Linsky had called to be let out of the jail cell, and while the officer was opening the door, Bannister charged the door, kicked it open, and escaped into the hall. Dammers, the FBI agent, was almost immediately down the chase because he had heard all the kerfuffle. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they were able to overpower him and take his gun with them on their escape. So he took Lucy with.
No, this motherfucker.
Yeah. So they both had traveled back to Patricia's because there was evidence there that would maybe clear his name for his wife's murder. Patricia had already started kind of losing it by then, living with her mother. And while they were looking around...
She was losing it in jail too, though.
Right. While they were looking around, they went to the mother's room, which is the closet that Dr. Linsky was hiding in, and found the FB box cutter in, and found Patricia's mother dead.
Damn.
So now they're not looking for evidence. They're just trying to get out of the house. Patricia has now acquired a knife from the kitchen and has gone to try to get them. It's like it's in a movie, for sure. Right? She apparently had gotten her knife into a door because she missed them, and then they were able to run. And they thought that running into the now defunct sanatorium would maybe help them to get away from her until they could get to the police.
Shut up!
Right, it's like a movie, right?
Right?
It's so great. It's so good.
And tell me that she was not running, but like walking after them?
Well, she wasn't Jason walking after anyone.
And then she was like meandering down the hall where they were hiding, and she was like, la, 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 la.
The thing is, she was able to find them, and after Dammers had gotten back up from when they had overpowered him, he pretty much found them as well. He figured that they were going towards his residence and was searching for them. So now they have two people on their tail.
Did he bring backup?
No, he's an FBI agent. He's a bit off, for sure.
Okay.
Going undercover has messed with his psyche a bit. So he's strange now.
So Millie does things different.
He's so silly. While they're in the psychiatric ward, Patricia finds them and tries to shoot at them. They miss the bullets. Hooray, hooray for them. They run. And of course, because there's only so many entrances and exits, especially since it's a psychiatric ward, they run into Dammers, who is telling them to freeze because now they've assaulted police officers. They seem to be in cahoots. And all of this stuff is happening with them.
And he doesn't know that this crazy...
No.
He doesn't know that this not-so-friendly lady is on their tail.
Right. And now she's found a shotgun.
Yeah.
So now she's running through the hospital looking for them with said shotgun, and he has them frozen. And when Bannister tries to explain and walk at him, he shoots at him. Bannister moves. Patricia is there with the shotgun and shoots at Dammers. Mm-hmm. From there, while Dammers is trying to finagle his situation, she strangles Frank. What he'll say later is that he had an out-of-body experience. Dr. Linsky, because she's the only one that's not really involved with the whole shooting at and whatevering, is able to overpower Patricia.
Good.
Frank, luckily, is able to regain consciousness and then get to Patricia. He says later that he had an out-of-body experience, and he insinuates that he pulled her soul out of her body. I think that's a bit off.
Yeah. He had a moment with her.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, at this point, it seems like Patricia's the one that's carrying on Johnny's work because it was her boyfriend, they were in love and stuff like that. I'm just not going to explain the play-by-play.
Everybody lived, though?
No. Dammers died from his wounds from Patricia's shotgun.
Okay, so he died. Okay.
He did. Frank lived, and Lucy lived.
Okay.
He says that he pulled her soul out of her body, and that's what caused her to die. More likely than not, it's Linsky and Frank self-defense. For sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, case closed on all of this. So police later would say that, oh, yeah, for sure, she's been pretty responsible for Mr. Bannister. And Dr. Linsky eventually end up dating. Mm-hmm. And she's accepting that he's super odd. This is where the paranormal comes in. So around this time, a lot of the locals had basically said there was a curse. I know.
I love a curse.
I know, right? A lot of the townspeople had basically blamed what they think was a curse on the, quote, shadow of death. It's a Grim Reaper type. Some of the people that were dying, whether they be healthy or old or young or like anything, heart almost looked like it was crushed. A lot of these people had died, and sometimes someone would say that they saw a shadowy figure that looked like it was a Grim Reaper that was coming at them complete with a scythe.
Oh.
Right? On